Okay, here we go. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Naomi Minhas, and welcome to 50 Shades of Red at Night. I'm your host. It's just me tonight, so we don't have the panel with us. I'm going to go ahead and just recap and give my thoughts on the President's State of the Union speech. Now, I want to start off by referencing Ronald Reagan, because President Trump has kind of modeled his presidency as well as some of his verbiage for his bills and things like that after Reagan's. So I'm just going to cut Reagan's second State of the Union speech up, go into it a little bit, and then give my thoughts on President Trump's State of the Union speech. And I want you to notice similarities between the two. I also want you to notice similarities between their delivery and kind of how not much has changed. Our overall goal as a country seems to remain the same. I'm going to dive into some things that President Trump lightly talked about that I feel should have been talked about more. And I think they're relevant to the American people. And these are policies that the people want to know about and the people want from him, but he's not giving them enough light because of the immigration issue. So let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we're going to chop Reagan's speech up and get going. All right, here we go.
Government spending and root out more waste, and we will continue our efforts to reduce the number of employees in the federal workforce by 75,000. The budget plan I submit to you on February 8th will realize major savings by dismantling the departments of energy and education and by eliminating ineffective subsidies for business. We will continue to redirect our resources to our two highest budget priorities: a strong national defense to keep America free and at peace, and a reliable safety net of social programs for those who have contributed and those who are.
Pause. I want to note throughout this entire speech, he says free. He consistently uses the word free, which I think is important because with Trump's leadership, a lot of people on the left feel like it's a dictatorship. You either, come to terms with what he wants, or that's it. You're not on board. But I think Reagan's wording really changed the way people felt about him. So this would be something important for Trump to note as he goes forward in his presidency and tries to win 2020.
Contrary to some of the wild charges you may have heard, this administration has not and will not turn its back on America's elderly or America's poor. Under the new budget, funding for social insurance programs will be more than double the amount spent only 6 years ago. But it would be foolish to pretend that these or any programs cannot be made more efficient and economical. The entitlement programs that make up our safety net for the truly needy have worthy goals and many deserving recipients. We will protect them. But there's only one way to see to it that these programs really help those whom they were designed to help, and that is to bring their spiraling costs under control.
Yeah.
Today, we face the absurd situation of a federal budget with 3/4 of its expenditures routinely referred to as uncontrollable. And a large part of this goes to entitlement programs. Committee after committee of this Congress has heard witness after witness describe many of these programs as poorly administered and ripe with waste and fraud. Virtually every American who shops in a local supermarket is aware of the daily abuses that take place in the food stamp program, which has grown by 16,000% in the last 15 years. Another example is Medicare and Medicaid, programs with worthy goals, but whose costs have increased from $11.2 billion to almost $60 billion, more than 5 times as much in just 10 years. Waste and fraud are serious problems. Back in 1980, federal investigators testified before one of your committees that corruption has permeated virtually every area of the Medicare because available resources are going not to the needy, but to the greedy. The time has come to control the uncontrollable. In August, we made a start.
I just want to say that ideology is what made me start voting conservative. That greed factor that has taken over our social programs is what caused me to step away from the Democratic Party and seek alternative candidates that best suited my beliefs, a belief that you should work hard, you should not, rely on the system to live. These systems are for people who are in need. And I think that's the issue. We have people committing fraud. I had someone on my Instagram arguing with me about how neither party cares about people and that to regulate welfare is a joke because everyone commits welfare fraud. No, everyone does not commit welfare fraud. That is not true. We need to better regulate it. We need to put something in place that allows for people who need it to receive the funds so that taxpayers are not funding people's lives, essentially. It's no way that welfare should be a stepping stool to a better opportunity, into a second phase of your life. But now welfare has made people stagnant where they don't even want to try because they're so comfortable relying on that consistent money that they don't have to work for, and I think that's the issue that we're having till this day, the issue with need versus greed.
I signed a bill to reduce the growth of these programs by $44 billion over the next 3 years. Social Security go a long way toward bringing federal spending under control. We intend to plug unwarranted tax loopholes and strengthen the law, which requires all large corporations to pay a minimum tax. I am confident the economic program we put into operation will protect the needy while it triggers a recovery that will benefit all Americans. It will stimulate the economy, result in increased savings, and provide capital for expansion, mortgages for home building, and jobs for the unemployed. Now that the essentials of that program are in place, our next major undertaking must be a program just as bold, just as innovative to make government again accountable to the people, to make our system of federalism work again. Our citizens feel they've lost control of even the most basic decisions made about the essential services of government, such as schools, welfare, roads, and even garbage collection. And they're right. A maze of interlocking jurisdictions and levels of government confronts average citizens in trying to solve even the simplest of problems. They don't know where to turn for answers, who to hold accountable, who to praise, who to blame, who to vote for or against.
I want to just pause right there because we skipped over a little bit, but that initiative he was talking about was essentially Trump's opportunity zones. So I'm going to try to go back, but that was a good point he was making. Let's see if we can find it.
A recovery that will benefit all Americans. Tax loopholes and strengthen the law is 95 million meals every day. More than $500 million has been proposed for minority business assistance. And researchers at the National Institute of Health will be increased by over $100 million. While meeting all these needs, we intend to plug unwarranted tax loopholes and strengthen the law. The essentials of that program are in place. Our next major undertaking, roads and even garbage collection. In 1960, the federal government had 132 categorical grant programs costing $7 billion. When I took office, there were approximately 500 costing nearly $100 billion. 13 programs for energy, 36 for pollution control, 66 for social. More intrusive, more unmanageable, more ineffective and costly, and above all, more accountable. Well, let's solve this problem with a single bold stroke. The return of some $47 billion in federal programs to state and local government, together with the means to finance them, and a transition period of nearly 10 years to avoid unnecessary disruption. I will shortly send this Congress a message describing this program. I want to emphasize, however, that its full details will have been worked out only after close consultation with congressional, state, and local officials. Starting in fiscal 1984, the federal government will assume full responsibility for the cost of the rapidly growing Medicaid program to go along with its existing responsibility for Medicare. As part of a financially equal swap, the states will simultaneously take full responsibility for aid to families with dependent children and food stamps. To a grassroots trust fund that will belong in fair shares to the 50 states. The total amount flowing into this fund will be $28 billion a year. Over the next 4 years, the states can use this money in either of two ways. If they want to continue receiving federal grants in such areas as transportation, education, and social services, they can use their trust fund money to pay for the grants. Or to the extent they choose to forego the federal grant programs, they can use their trust fund money to lower or raise taxes on their own and fund and manage these programs as they see fit. And the people who pay for them. Hand in hand with this program to strengthen the discretion and flexibility of state and local governments, we're proposing legislation for an experimental effort to improve and develop our depressed urban areas in the 1980s and 90s. This legislation will permit states and localities to apply to the federal government for designation as urban enterprise zones.
Okay, so Reagan is calling it urban enterprise zones, and Trump is calling it opportunity zones. We just heard about Reagan's plan to kind of funnel money towards where it needs to be, and he's allowing the state to dictate where that goes. I think that's kind of a libertarian approach, letting the state, handle their money, dictate where it's going, and not letting the government as a whole do it, so that state by state basis, they would know what's most important regarding the delegation of funds. So I think that's a good approach. Will Trump take that approach on? We will see, but he's going to take his whole opportunity zones approach, and let's see.
A broad range of special economic incentives in the zones will help attract new business, new jobs, new opportunity to America's inner cities and rural towns. Some will say our mission is to save free enterprise. Well, I say we must free enterprise so that together we can save America.
That word free is used again. We. He never uses I. I think that's Trump's problems also. He's constantly saying I like it's him. He's not uniting us as a people when he speaks most of the time. So by saying we can save America, again, Trump took, make America great again from Reagan. It's kind of like he's the father of America. Me watching it now in 2019, looking back, this man was a leader. I feel comfortable and safe knowing that he's a leader. And I feel that way too with President Trump, because I think he is so strong-headed that no matter what, he's going to do what he has to do to make sure America is great again. But there are a large majority of people that do not agree with that statement. And I think that if we can kind of get on the same page, especially utilizing these State of the Union speeches, that's a step forward in coming together as a country. So we're going to exit out of Reagan, and I'm going to start sharing President Trump's inauguration. So I had notes, but they deleted off the screen. So bear with me if I'm trying to figure it out, guys, because it's like 1 a.m. and it's been a long day. But this needed to get out. We needed to talk about some of these things, and, it's relevant. It's important. The new generation of voters needs to be aware of exactly what they're voting for and what these policies are and how they apply to them directly. Even Reagan mentioned there's grassroots efforts that need to be, connected with the party. And it's important to note he was very similar to Trump in that he was a Democrat up until he ran. He switched. And that's kind of like President Trump. He switched to run. So they're not your typical far right conservatives, but it works for them. And I think it could work better for Trump if he just speaks better. He picks and chooses when he wants to take on that leadership role. But I think what we're about to watch shows exactly who he is as our president. This is a very good view to have of him. All right, let's see. Boom. We're going to start it off here because we'll be here all day. They clap so much in this speech. It's ridiculous. Oh, look at that. Looking good. I'm not going to touch him. He was so nice to me. We had like a quick 30-minute conversation. He was the cutest thing. Very fast.
Wages are rising at the fastest pace in decades and growing for blue-collar workers who I promised to fight for. They're growing faster than anyone else thought possible. Nearly 5 million Americans have been lifted off food stamps.
I want to pause it already.
Rebuild and revive.
Because I had someone, again, arguing with me on Instagram. If you guys aren't following our Instagram, go to 50 Shades of Red podcast on Instagram and Facebook. We have healthy discussions there. We debate people. We argue, but it's all in good faith, you know. I had someone say that we are almost in a recession, that people cannot find jobs, the economy is doing terrible. Well, A, look at gas prices. I disagree. And B, almost everyone I know is making above minimum wage. They have financial security. They're able to pay their bills. They've got a little left over. And they're not on food stamps or welfare. A lot of people that I know who are under 30 and over 35 are in these positions. So I beg to differ. I don't think that we are at that point as we were with Obama, where people were still struggling to climb out of the recession. I think we're out of the recession. Now, some will say that the cycle will return and we're just doomed for another recession. It's just the way the world works, right? It's a revolving door. But I disagree. I think that Trump is bringing jobs back to America. And because he's so strong about that, and he's strong about keeping, things like automotive industries in America to keep those jobs, I think that we're going to see the effects of that even when he's gone.
Our brave young pilots. Now we must step boldly and bravely into the next chapter of this great American adventure. And we must create a new standard of living for the 21st century. An amazing quality of life for all of our citizens is within reach. We can make our community safer, our family stronger, our culture richer, our faith deeper, and our middle class bigger and more prosperous than ever before. But we must reject the politics of revenge, resistance, and retribution, and embrace the boundless potential of cooperation, compromise, and the common good.
Yes. There you go. Compromise. That's the problem.
Together, we can break decades of political stalemate. We can bridge old divisions, heal old wounds, build new coalitions, forge new solutions, and unlock the extraordinary promise of America's future. The decision is ours to make. We must choose between greatness or gridlock, results or resistance.
This goes a little off tangent.
Faster than anyone else. Asian American unemployment have all reached their lowest levels ever recorded. 7 million people at work. We passed a massive tax cut for working families and doubled the child tax credit. we virtually ended the estate tax, or death tax,
Okay.
as it is often called, on small businesses, for ranches, and also for family farms.
This is important. So a lot of people don't know what this death tax is or this estate tax is. And living in a rural area like myself, it's something that I need to know of because I may one day, have a farm and my kids may inherit it, or who knows, right? Who knows what could happen. But I'm going to just stop sharing really quick. And I want to read this to you. It's just a quick summary of what it is. Okay. And this is from thefederalist.com. Otherwise known as the inheritance tax, the estate tax enables the government to get a hefty chunk of a person's estate before it is passed on to the inheritors. This is often controversial, especially amongst the Republicans, who believe the country needs to encourage family business and economic longevity. Of course, why wouldn't we want to encourage that? That's the point. It's also important to note that the federal estate tax only impacts a fraction of Americans. By only, they mean prior to, it was for people who made under $1 million. Majority of family farms make under $1 million. And I believe they have up to like 15 years to pay off the debt if it's owed, or they can pay interest. But people have to understand that these farms this isn't their main source of income a lot of times. So the ones that do have this as their main source of income, this is now a big relief for them. And I think that's what he should have elaborated on, just, what exactly this estate tax was. So I'll go ahead. How much in taxes do these estates generally owe? According to the Tax Policy Center, while the top statutory rate is a staggering 40%, the average effective tax rate is 17%. Estate taxes are due only on the portion of an estate's value that exceeds the exemption level. At the 2017 exemption level of $5.49 million, a $6 million estate will owe estate taxes on $510,000 at most. Second, heirs can often shield a large portion of an estate's remaining value from taxation through generous deductions and other discounts that policymakers have enacted over time. So in other words, there are some loopholes, okay? But now that that tax has been lifted, that burden has also been lifted, and people can continue to leave these family farms and these businesses to their family without them having to worry about how they're going to pay these taxes. So I just thought that was important to note. I don't know why he didn't elaborate more on that, considering that big majority of his base is in that type of rural region of the Midwest and down south. All right, let's get back. Where are we at? I can't see anything. Okay.
We eliminated the very unpopular Obamacare individual mandate penalty.
So the penalty he's referring to is if you ever filed your taxes, at the end of the tax thing, they would say, did you have health care all of 2018? If not, you may owe yada yada. They've lifted that. I just want to add, I never thought it was smart of Obama to implement something that said, you must take this or pay me for not doing it. And I also think it's important to note, I think this is somewhat of a compromising effort. He had a lot of pushback on repealing Obamacare. And even prior to running, if I can recall correctly, I don't believe he ever really had a game plan for what he was going to do if he did get rid of Obamacare. So I think this is an initial first step, even though, he promised it was going to be within, I think, the first 60 or 90 days or something, or 30 days of his presidency. But I think just lifting that is a good step forward because he's dealing with a lot of other big ticket issues. But hopefully the Democrats can see that as an olive branch, which I don't think they will, but it's hopeful thinking, right?
and to give critically ill patients access to life-saving cures, we passed, very importantly, right to try.
Yes. So we're going to stop it again. I'm going to stop sharing again. Right to try. A lot of people don't know what that is. He talked about it a little bit in one of his White House briefings. I'm going to go ahead and just read you straight from the website. You can go there, righttotry.org. May 30th, 2018, President Donald Trump signed S204, the Trickett Wendler, Frank Mangiello, Jordan McLean, and Matthew Bellina Right to Try Act. Right to Try opens a new pathway for terminally ill patients who have exhausted their government-approved options and can't get into a clinical trial to access treatments. Although 41 states have passed Right to Try laws, the signing of S204 makes Right to Try the law of the land, creating a uniform system for terminal patients seeking access to investigational treatments. This is amazing. Treatments that the FDA normally would not approve, he is allowing you access to. He's basically saying, if you want to take a risk to save your life, do it. And this is something that should have been done. I don't understand why they were regulating this in the first place. But again, it's all about money, right? Who qualifies for Right to Try? To be eligible for Right to Try, a patient must meet the following conditions: be diagnosed with a life-threatening disease or condition, have exhausted approved treatment options, be unable to participate in a clinical trial involving the eligible investigational drug as certified by a doctor, give written informed consent. It's as simple as that. So kudos to President Trump for doing something that needed to be done. Hopefully millions of Americans can take advantage of this. All right, let's get back to it. All right, here we go.
My administration has cut more regulations in a short period of time than any other administration during its entire tenure. Companies are coming back to our country in large numbers, thanks to our historic reductions in taxes and regulations. And we have unleashed a revolution in American energy. The United States is now the #1 producer of oil and natural gas anywhere in the world. Time for bipartisan action. Believe it or not, we have already proven that that's possible. In the last Congress, both parties came together to pass unprecedented legislation to confront the opioid crisis, a sweeping new farm bill, historic VA reforms, and after 4 decades of rejection, we passed VA accountability so that we can finally terminate those who mistreat our wonderful veterans. That 22 years and had expected to be in prison for the remainder of her life.
Alice Johnson.
In June, I commuted Alice's sentence. When I saw Alice's beautiful family greet her at the prison gates, hugging and kissing and crying and laughing, I knew I did something right.
It made me cry.
Alice is with us tonight, and she is a terrific woman.
Yeah.
Terrific. Alice, please.
This is what I can remember. Oh crap! This is one of the first times that I can recall a president, or even social media people, celebrity shedding light on an issue like this. Normally, the platform isn't big enough to garner attention, but Kim Kardashian brought Alice Johnson to light, and Trump took the bait, and she doesn't even like him, but look where it got her. It got her to be able to free a woman who was wrongfully incarcerated for a certain amount of time. And now that it's opened the gate to the prison reform and everything else that has taken place. So kudos to President Trump and everyone else involved, because I know there's probably a bunch of people involved in helping this. And I know there are other people who are getting granted clemency because of this. And this is just a great step forward for prison reform. Let me see, where were we? Oh, there we go.
Alice, thank you for reminding us that we always have the power to shape our own destiny. Thank you very much, Alice. Thank you very much. Inspired by stories like Alice's, my administration worked closely with members of both parties to sign the First Step Act into law. Big deal. Big deal. This legislation reformed sentencing laws that have wrongly and disproportionately harmed the African American community. The First Step Act gives nonviolent offenders the chance to re-enter society as productive, law-abiding citizens. Now, states across the country are following our lead. America is a nation that believes in redemption. We are also joined tonight by Matthew Charles from Tennessee. In 1996, at the age of 30,
this is what it's about.
Matthew was sentenced to 35 years for selling drugs and related offenses. Over the next 2 decades, he completed more than 30 Bible studies, became a law clerk, and mentored many of his fellow inmates. Now Matthew is the very first person to be released from prison under the First Step Act.
That's beautiful. I think, this doesn't get enough attention. I hate that it has to be a race thing, but why is it that now this president is taking more strides towards this than his predecessor? I hate to see minority and Black people in particular say he doesn't care about Black people, when he's gone out his way, no matter what the agenda is, to do stuff that is going to improve the African American community specifically. When I decided I wanted to be a lawyer, this is what I was doing it for, to help people, like people who were in my family, get a second chance and not be held back in life because of mistakes that, they made that were wrong. We want to believe that the Constitution is something that's being upheld in the courts, but we have liberal judges who are not looking at precedent, who are not trying to uphold the Constitution, but they are trying to create new law on the bench. That is not their place. That is not the time. And as a result of their bias, or whatever else you want to call it, they put men who are nonviolent, African American men, in jail for longer sentences, for crimes that shouldn't even be garnering jail time, if at most they should be put into some type of reentry program. But because of whatever beliefs they feel, they throw precedent out the window and they start creating law or adjusting law on the bench. And that's not right. It's not fair. And it doesn't get enough attention in the Black community. You want to say that Democrats have everything in mind to make the Black community better, but they don't. It's truly a bipartisan effort. It really is. And I think this president is showing that if you really want to make a change, you don't need the other side's approval. You don't need them to help you. You're going to do it regardless. And this First Step Act is him doing it, period. It's him shutting everyone up and allowing the Black community to come in and say, wow, you're really helping us. Man wants to sit in prison for a mistake. Alex Johnson would have been sitting in prison.
Thank you, Matthew. Welcome home. Now, Republicans and Democrats must join forces again to confront an urgent national crisis.
Keep your border control.
Congress has 10 days left to pass a bill that will fund our government,
I think,
protect our home.
I'm going to skip by this. I think we're sick of the wall. We're going to wait and see what happens. If you watch the State of the Union, you already know he's going to elaborate on this and just try to come to a conclusion. I also want to say this woman right here, Christian Nielsen, I think I said her name correctly. She was actually being, I want to say, interrogated in the Senate Intelligence Committee hearings. You can go on YouTube and look those hearings up. I think I'm probably going to do a video on it similar to this one. And it is interesting, to say the least. This woman was asked many questions regarding immigration, how immigrants stay in the country illegally, if laws work, border security, national defense questions. And she handled herself very well, considering it was a very hostile environment. So stay tuned for that video. I think I'm going to do a separate video about that, because it's something that the American people need to educate themselves on. Democrat, Republican, Independent, you need to understand that these hearings are a way for us to see how the other side thinks. And because the Democrats are in charge and they have the majority, they were leading this interrogation. And it is disrespectful and disgraceful the way they treated this woman, the way that they took their hate out for President Trump on her for doing her job. When the facts were presented and they didn't like them, they railroaded her and consistently would say, you're not answering the question. It's a very interesting perspective that we get from watching this. And I think it's relevant to the way that our government is ran and the people who are running our government. We have people like Kamala Harris, who's going to run for president. We need to see the real her. And this allows you to see right exactly who she is and how she feels. And it gives you kind of an idea of what type of leader she would be. And from what I could tell, it's not a good one.
The savage gang, MS-13, now operates in at least 20 different American states, and they almost all come through our southern border. Yeah. Just yesterday, an MS-13 gang member was taken into custody for a fatal shooting on a subway platform in New York City. We are removing these gang members by the thousands, but until we secure our border, they're going to keep streaming right back in. Year after year, countless Americans are murdered by criminal, illegal aliens. I've gotten to know many wonderful angel moms and dads and families. No one should ever have to suffer the horrible heartache that they have had to endure. Here tonight is Deborah Bissell. Just 3 weeks ago, Deborah's parents, Gerald and Sharon, were burglarized and shot to death in their Reno, Nevada home by an illegal alien.
I want to stop it right here because I used to live in Las Vegas, Nevada. And when I lived in Vegas, when was this? 2010, 2009, 2011. I would consistently get live stopped because I was tan and they would check my green card status because there were so many illegals. They had constant news cycles on saying that illegals could strip the metal off your car in 3 minutes flat. There were shortages of dogs. They were stealing people's dogs and breeding them. Welfare, you couldn't go get on welfare unless you brung in paper applications every week and then verified your identity through like 3 different crazy ways. This was back then because people were bringing in fake documents. My ex at the time, he could not get a job because illegals were everywhere on the corner taking up work for almost nothing. Even gardener jobs and things like that, something that would get you at least a minimum wage, they weren't being offered to Americans. They were specifically being offered to illegals because why not? They're willing to work super cheap. But that in turn messes up our economy for the people who are born here, who are actual citizens here. Other immigrants who were legal were very upset by all this. So I think that's important to note when you hear about stories like this, where illegals are running rampant and violent, where this is your home, this is where you're supposed to feel safe, you know? I don't want to spend too much time on immigration because we've done a lot of videos about it, but I just thought that was important to note.
This is a smart, strategic, see-through steel barrier, not already as a result of my administration's efforts in 2018. Drug prices experienced their single largest decline in 46 years.
I'm going to stop it right here. Fun fact, Johnson & Johnson announced today that they will now be posting their drug choices. Oh, I'm sorry. They will be posting their prescription medication drugs prices on their commercials. So just for instance, if you see blood pressure medicine, it'll say this much money, you know, so you know now. But it's funny how they didn't want to do this until this occurred.
But we must do more. It's unacceptable that Americans pay vastly more than people in other countries for the exact same drugs, often made in the exact same place. This is wrong. This is unfair. And together, we will stop it. And we'll stop it fast. I am asking Congress to pass legislation that finally takes on the problem of global freeloading and delivers fairness and price transparency for American patients. Finally.
Finally. Thank God.
We should also require drug companies, insurance companies, and hospitals to disclose real prices to foster competition and bring costs way down.
This is true. I used to be an at-home caregiver, and a lot of my patients would not know how much their drugs would cost until they would pick them up. Because as you know, the pharmaceutical companies, they keep them hidden. They push these samples to doctors. As a result, doctors push them to patients. They're not really concerned about the prices, especially with the older community needing them. They figure they're going to buy them regardless, no matter what. Now with the transparency, like that was announced today with Johnson & Johnson, say Johnson & Johnson's medication is $80. And I don't know, let's just ABC's medication is $130. This is going to be more widely known now, so that when you go to your doctor, you can say, don't write me that prescription for A, B, and C. Write me the Johnson & Johnson version of this medication. You know, so it's going to foster competition, which is exactly what we need in this market.
Term abortion of children that would allow a baby I am also proud to be the first president who included in my budget a plan for nationwide paid family leave so that every new parent has the chance to bond with their newborn child.
Love that. I love that.
There could be no greater contrast to the beautiful image of a mother holding her infant child than the chilling displays our nation saw in recent days. Lawmakers in New York cheered with delight upon the passage of legislation that would allow a baby to be ripped from the mother's womb moments from birth. These are living, feeling, beautiful babies who will never get the chance to share their love and their dreams with the world. And then we had the case of the governor of Virginia, where he stated he would execute a baby after birth.
Yeah.
To defend the dignity of every person, I am asking Congress to pass legislation to prohibit the late-term abortion of children who can feel pain in the mother's womb.
Let's see how many women are saying that. This is sad. How many women saying that? They should all be ashamed of themselves.
Fair share.
I can't even watch
a
it.
Republican.
They need to be ashamed of themselves. It is sick. Like, not one woman in that whole batch was standing up to speak out against that being wrong. No thanks. We're gonna skip ahead now. I think that was like the last major point. Oh, here's the part everyone wanted to see on Instagram.
President of the United States. We would right now, in my opinion, be in a major war with North Korea. Much work remains to be done, but my relationship with Kim Jong-un is a good one. Chairman Kim and I will meet again on February 27th and 28th in Vietnam.
Good. We need communication. So good. As long as he doesn't call him Robin.
2 weeks ago, the United States officially recognized the legitimate government of Venezuela and its new president, Juan Guaido. We stand with the Venezuelan people in their noble quest for freedom.
Yep.
And we condemn the brutality of the Maduro regime, whose socialist policies have turned that nation from being the wealthiest in South America into a state of abject poverty and despair.
You know, it's really sad that we see video and images where we are sending aid and we are sending food and different things over there, and they are banning it from coming in. They almost don't want the help. They want to self-destruct, and it's sad.
Here in the United States, we are alarmed by the new calls to adopt socialism in our country.
No thanks. I'm good.
America was founded on liberty and independence, and not government coercion, domination, and control.
Yeah.
We are born free, and we will stay free.
Very Reagan. Born free, stay free. I want other people. I want to note that when I went to the White House for YBLS and we were chanting "Make America Great, USA," they said, "Oh, they're paid actors. How dare they?" Well, where is CNN saying they're paid actors? Because it seems that Democrats and Republicans are chanting USA. It seems that they are coming together because they love being free in their country and having the right to disagree with things. But no.
Tonight,
only when
we renew our resolve that America will never be a socialist country.
so great for listening to us.
One of the most complex set of challenges we face and have for many years is in the Middle East. Our approach is based on principle realism, not discredited theories that have failed for decades to yield progress. For this reason, my administration recognized the true capital of Israel and proudly opened the American embassy in Jerusalem.
And this is what the people want. So, I think he wraps it up. We're gonna end
at Dhaka.
Oh.
He remembers watching through a hole in the wall of a cattle car. Your presence this evening is very much appreciated. Thank you very much.
All right, so that was the end. President Trump went ahead and honored some Holocaust survivors and things like that. Very honorable. People sung happy birthday. You know, I believe it was Ted Cruz's dad that they sung happy birthday to. But the vibe just gave off a very, it gave off the fact that he was trying. He was making an effort. He modeled his lingo after Reagan. So he did do a good job with that. He was very compassionate. He was very relatable, I think, the way he was speaking. He wasn't demanding. The news said he spent too much time on border security and immigration. But you know what? That's his big ticket item, so he's going to put it in there. I do think that he tried to reunite the parties together as one. I think that he did stretch, we're all Americans, which is important to note. I don't understand why people are trying to get away from the fact that this is one country under God, you know? I really appreciate his elaboration on things like foreign affairs and things that most Americans don't research and take an interest into. So I appreciate the transparency. And I want you guys to look forward to the next video on the Senate Intelligence Committee hearings. They are very interesting. You will learn a lot. And I might even be doing a video, probably with the panel and with some of our vets, because we do have Solomon's a vet, Cordell's a vet, I believe Anthony's a vet. And I believe one of them has gone active duty over in Afghanistan. So I want to get their perspective on what CNN has recently said to be American weapons being transported over there and used by the militia. I want to see if they've ever witnessed anything like that. And, you know, is America still funneling money into those situations, ways we can get out of it, and our president's viewpoint on it. So stay tuned. And again, I am Naomi Minhas, and thank you for joining 50 Shades of Red at night. Please like, please comment, please subscribe. We can't continue to make videos if we don't know that you appreciate them. We welcome everyone's opinion, Democrat, Republican, Independent, Libertarian. We want this to be a platform where we can learn off each other. We want this to be a platform where we educate each other. And even though we are a right-leaning conservative podcast, we want it to be inclusive. So join the club, subscribe. Thank you. And we will see you Monday with Saul G's The Aftermath.